Welcome to the Election University podcast, a weekly show where we hear from industry experts who share tips and tricks for winning campaigns. Whether you're running for office now, thinking about it for the future, or just want to know more about campaigns and elections, Election University is for you. With Election University, click, learn, win. And now your host, Jason Bennett and Rainey Cohen.
Hello.
Hi.
Everyone, thank you for joining us for another episode of Election University Podcast. I'm your co-host, Jason Bennett.
And I'm Rainey Cohen.
Rainey, how are you doing today?
I am doing fantastic. How are you doing?
I am doing well as well. We are just around the corner from our primary election here.
Yeah,
and
it is GOTV in Washington State.
It's a little zombie-like over here at the recording studios, but we're going to power through. We are excited. Every once in a while, we're going to be testing various low-cost or free products from various vendors, and today is going to be no exception. We're testing a new campaign tool called Outvote, and we're going to be talking to its founder, Naseem Makiya.
Yeah, and I'm pretty excited to learn about this. It is an app that helps you remind your friends to vote. And, you know, as we talk about a lot on the podcast, it's those face-to-face conversations that get people to fill out their ballots. And what if you could just remind your friends to vote really easily? Yeah.
And we love talking with new technological startup companies that are moving into the political sphere. And this is no exception. This company was founded in Silicon Valley and worked and tested its product in some city councilor races in Cambridge, Massachusetts. And we're going to talk to Naseem a bit more about this product and
what's going on.
Yeah, and how it's changing the electorate. So I'm very excited to be talking with him today, and let's get down to some numbers.
All right.
Excellent. So Naseem, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
We wanted to talk a bit more about the origin story of Outvote and how you got to be involved in politics, because your background isn't necessarily in politics, and we want to know how this came about. So why don't you walk us through your origin story a bit?
Sure, yeah. So I guess I always had, my own political opinions, but was never, involved, like you said, and kind of boots on the ground. But the whole point of learning engineering for me was to make an impact with that skill set. So it started off in education technology at a startup called Data Camp. We were kind of actually doing similar stuff to what you guys are doing, except instead of around elections, we were teaching folks data science, learning R and Python, putting courses online for that. So kind of did the startup thing there, was the first hire there, helped them grow quite a bit, and then got swept up in the elections a little bit in 2016 and wanted to take that into politics. So, I left Data Camp, started a freelance kind of consulting thing called Code for Community. We worked with startups and nonprofits with kind of good missions around civic engagement or around charitable giving, things like that. And kind of started talking to elected officials in Cambridge, getting my feet a little bit wet. Like you said, I didn't have much experience. So I wanted to kind of figure out what the problem was. So I was quickly introduced to Naseem Makiya. Everyone told me, young Cambridge City Councilor, won on his first time running, and was kind of, trying new things, had kind of like a real door-knocking grassroots approach. So met with him, started hacking on a few different things. He gave me some insight into some of the problems, he was seeing and candidates face when trying to run these on lower budgets with less access to big media buys and things like that, but really having kind of quite a different strategy from, national, congressional, state level even.
You mean our listenership? You mean our base of support here at Election University?
Sorry?
This is our base of support. These are our people who listen to this nerd podcast.
Exactly. Yeah. So we started working together, and one of the problems that he had found, or I guess we're working in conversations. So he would, start door knocking super early, when people kind of weren't in that mindset of already being kind of marketed to, already being, it's a bit, as it gets towards election day, it becomes a little bit more, maybe a little less organic. So he started kind of really, really early, just talking to folks and door knocking. And, I started volunteering as well. I door knocked for Mike Connolly, was a precinct captain there. And it's obviously, probably the most effective tactic, but it's hard to scale. So, I'd door knock for a few hours and maybe I'd reach 5 to 10 folks, depending on the time of day. And so, those great conversations work, but you just can't reach everyone you want to reach most of the time. So in addition to kind of doing that, we would, start trying to text people and try to find ways to create those conversations, that kind of could scale. And so the way we started doing that was through friends, basically. People get a lot of email in their inbox. They get a lot of kind of text messages from strangers, and those work to some extent. I think the text messages from strangers, the conversion rate's coming down a little bit. People are really getting a lot this year, especially. So people are starting to tune them out.
I was going to ask a quick question. So 2017, you got involved in some city councilor races in the Boston area, essentially. And so for perspective for our listeners, what are the sizes of those races? Like, how many voters would a particular councilor have to contact to win their election? How much money do they typically raise? Give us some metrics so folks can kind of get a sense of, particularly for our prospective candidates and candidates who are running right now, what is it apples to apples? Is it a large, I'm assuming Boston's a huge area, but are they districted? Do they run at large? What's the makeup of the race?
Sure. Yeah. So Cambridge is about 100,000 people, about 65,000 registered voters, but only about 20,000 votes. So you've got about 20,000 voters you need to reach, and it's 9 Cambridge city councilors, and you need to get about, depends on the year, but between 1,800 and 2,000, 2,100 votes or so to get in. And it's kind of by ranked choice. You can vote for more than one, and then it's kind of scored in a weird way. Basically, whoever gets the most ones, and then twos, and then so on. And then the top 9 win. Is that exactly? Yeah, yeah. So your vote always counts for someone, which is really great. Assuming that everyone you voted for hasn't lost already. Yeah. Well, hey, there was like 32 candidates running. Wow. So it's a big field. Yeah, it's pretty crazy. One of the larger fields we've seen, and a lot of cool activities. So I love that. Love that you guys are doing this and kind of trying to encourage folks and teach folks to run as well. So yeah, that's kind of the makeup of it. So you need about 2,000 votes, and it's just not that much. Like, you can have that reach in a one-on-one way, or if you can't quite knock all the doors, maybe you can do it by text. And so yeah, you don't. So then you plan for basically like having committed votes of double or even triple that, usually more like double. So you plan on, like, if you need 2,000 votes, you're probably going to try to get 3,000 people to commit, and say they're going to vote for you. Right. Okay. So this is your first dabble in electoral politics, and you are working on how many campaigns? How many volunteered campaigns are you working on? Yeah. So when we piloted Outvote, we had we were in sort of 8 or 9 campaigns, but we really had 4 active campaigns that really committed to it. And that's kind of like the key to using the tool is, in the same way you can't just like throw up a website or a Facebook page. You kind of have to commit to it as a strategy. And so those campaigns really like took it as another option where people could help. So one of the problems we're trying to solve is right now, how can people help? Well, they can donate, kind of a one-time thing, and a pretty big ask for most people. They can volunteer a ton of their time. Probably that's the most helpful, but again, it's a huge ask. People don't have a lot of time. So we're trying to make a way where people can contribute in like 10, 15 minutes. You can do it before you start. You can do it on the couch. If you're a volunteer, you can do it before you start any other activity. So kind of, if you can take that as like, this is one more strategy that anyone can do to help the campaign, maybe you can get more folks involved in a smaller kind of way. That's great.
I am at this point having a hard time kind of wrapping my brain around how this tool works. Can we pause and talk about what is the tool and how do people use it?
Yeah, sure. So basically the tool is an app, and candidates, sign up for Outvote. We put them on the platform, and they all get basically a link that's their kind of Outvote experience. And so they share, usually what will happen is they share that link with their email list, with their volunteers, with their campaign staff, and all those folks basically click the link and get dropped into the app in their campaign. So let's say, so someone's running, let's say Naseem's running for Cambridge City Council. So now I get dropped into Outvote in Naseem's race. And what it's going to do is it's going to match my phone contacts against the registered voters in Cambridge and tell me who I know in Cambridge that lives in the district, is a Democrat, has voted in the past. And we kind of try to score your contacts based on that to just help you just reach out to them. Of course, they're your friends. You can reach out to whoever you want. But that's kind of the premise. So you go through and you say, okay, like I know 10 folks. And you can even, let's say I live in Somerville, I might still know people in Cambridge. So it's useful even out for people outside of district. So then the whole thing is just sending that link around, being like, hey, here are the voters you know, tell them about the race, tell them about Naseem, and then try and get them to do the same thing. Like they probably know voters too. So you have this like text conversation that's hopefully a bit more meaningful than kind of a email blast or something. And you try and kind of get them involved as well.
Okay, so I click on a link and then it sends me a list of my friends who are registered voters, and then it's up to me to decide if I text them or email them or call them or talk to them in person? Or is there like a script or suggested way that you want people to be engaging with folks?
Yeah, so the campaign has access to the script. So you click the link, it drops you into the Outvote app. We show you who you can contact. You select like, okay, I'm going to talk to these 7-8 people. And then you make those selections and you can edit the kind of default messaging. So the campaign probably puts something in there. If you're 2 months out, you're probably trying to recruit volunteers to help, or maybe you're fundraising and asking for a donation. But as you get closer and closer to election day, you're probably asking for just GOTV, make sure your friends are going to vote, make sure to remind them. So that script you can kind of change whenever you want. And then the user themselves has a chance to edit it. Everyone kind of talks to their friends a little bit differently. So they can kind of edit it, but you make sure you have like the framework of the language, any links you need to send people, stuff like that.
Cool.
So in episode 11, we talked to the founder and CEO of Voter Circle, Sangeeth Paruri, and this tool sounds very similar in concept to that tool as well. So talk to us how Outvote is different than Voter Circle, and maybe some of the tools that would make this different. Would a campaign use both of these tools because one has a set of features and the other one does not, or talk to us about the difference between the two?
Yeah, so the difference between us and Voter Circle is just the channel, really. Like Voter Circle does what we do for email, and we do it for text. We really like text as a channel. We hadn't seen it really done, so that's kind of the difference maker we went for. There's other stuff in there. We try to be very personalized, have it be more of a conversation, and just like, hopefully something, that doesn't just hit your inbox and you kind of move on. But that's the main differentiator is the channel. We love what they're doing. We, as a campaign, it's more a question of like, what capacity do I have? Like, you can definitely use both, right? But at a certain point, you're going to be using so many different tools that it's a lot of overhead for your volunteers. So that's something people run into, I think. But ideally you'd be hitting both channels for sure.
Okay, so then let's talk about the application of this a little bit, because when I start hearing about matches with the voter file, I immediately think, well, a certain percentage of millennials and even more Gen Xers, or even an additional set of people in Gen X, just have cell phone, registered, and that may not necessarily be registered with the voter registrar in your state or the Secretary of State. So how is the match rate with the voter file? So like for us in Washington State and in other states that I've worked, phone numbers are not required to be filled out on voter registration forms. And so that's enhanced information that the parties or, doing magazine match lists, and when you buy consumer data, you can do matches and stuff. How good of a match rate, particularly on cell phones, are you getting with the voter file?
Yeah, basically there's a lot we do to match against the voter file, but it's a hard problem. It's you're playing with limited information, but we're constantly trying to make that better. It's probably the biggest technical challenge that we're facing. Like everything else is pretty straightforward, but we're getting better and better at it. And so there are a few different things we're doing. One is we've licensed the national voter list, the same one that the Democratic Party uses. So we're working off a pretty good data set in terms of just like logistics. It helps with smaller races because you don't have to worry about uploading your voter file and keeping it updated and all that. We're already doing that for you, because that can be a bit of a headache. So we're working off basically the best data set we have. And then we're trying in the background to find as much information about your contact as possible in terms of like using the number and the name. So, we'll look at things like nicknames. We'll look at, whatever, data is associated with that number. If we can find your, name in yellow pages or things like that. And even if we don't find an exact match, often we can still know if you're potentially in the area. So even if you're not like a registered voter, we didn't find that match, we can say, hey, this person might be in district, and so we sort them to the top, and then the friend probably knows to some extent their own contact list as well.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, the matching is more of like a guideline to make it easier for you to be like, hey, here are 10 people you should reach out to. But it's something we're trying to get really good at. So our match rate in terms of like, can we get people, not to the voter list, but just overall, like how many people can we match to see if they're in the district is about 60, 70%. Our match rate to the voter file is a little bit lower. And that's something we're constantly trying to improve. So hopefully this week we're going to make some big push on that as well.
Cool.
You've referenced a couple of times Democrats, and is this platform only for Democratic candidates?
Yes, it is.
So I'm curious because I think that Voter Circle is open to both Democrats and Republicans. Do I remember that correctly, Jason?
They're not a closed door, I think was the point that Sangeeth was making.
And so I guess I'm just curious. Like we live in a state where you don't have to register as a party affiliation, and so how do you solve the problem of knowing that you're
races.
polling? That you're polling Democratic friends of people.
Sure. Yeah. So, again, I mean, they're your friends, so you might have some idea. But what we're doing is, even if you're in a state where, like you said, everyone is basically unaffiliated, if we can find matches to the national voter file, like there is still like information, even though you're unaffiliated, basically on how Democratic or progressive you might be. So we're trying to use that kind of data set as best we can to help. But yeah, again, it's a tricky problem. And so, most people at the end of the day, they're going to pick who they're, comfortable texting and think would be interested.
Sure.
Yeah. So I'm really interested in knowing, how do you develop an app, and what's the timeline, and how do you get investors and grow, and what sort of feedback you're getting from candidates and campaigns, and what's the roadmap for version 2.0?
Sure. Yeah. In terms of how we grow, we're basically, last November we were in kind of first iteration. Let's see if this thing works. So this year is all about scaling for the midterm. So we want to make obviously a big impact in November. We're trying to get as many campaigns as possible. We do everything from work with activist organizations that are already working with a bunch of campaigns to working with campaigns directly. There are a lot of exciting partnerships coming up that I can't get too much into because we're not, sure what'll come through. But we've piloted for organizations like Swing Left and are kind of trying every angle we can. We see us as kind of like the engineers building this tech to be as helpful as possible. We want to be constantly collecting feedback from campaigns as to what's working so we can improve it. And then everyone else who has already done, the really hard work of bringing folks together, creating activist communities, creating constituent spaces that care about certain things in the community. They're kind of like, once the tool has value, they're pushing it out to those folks. So we're kind of see ourselves as the technology aspect of that. In terms of investment, we're in Y Combinator right now, and I don't know how familiar you are with the Startup Accelerator, but basically the whole thing.
I mean, we watch Silicon Valley, the TV show, so that is literally my only introduction to what an incubator is. So it's exactly like that, right?
It's exactly like that. And actually, if we had done this on Skype, you would see a background of Post-it notes on our wall and whiteboards with all sorts of great drawings. So I'm sorry your listeners can't see that, but it is exactly like Silicon Valley. So go watch the show. And yeah, so basically it all leads into this thing called Demo Day, which is actually in 2 weeks. So it's a pretty crazy time right now. And in 2 weeks, we'll kind of pitch a room full of investors on what we're doing and our vision for November and beyond into 2020, and try to raise a bunch of runway to kind of build this infrastructure for Democrats and for civic engagement in general. We also want to do registration drives, find your friends who aren't registered to vote, and make sure they're registered, and just general GOTV. We're working, probably we'll be working with vote.org this November just to do, nonpartisan GOTV, getting folks out to the ballot box.
Yeah, that's great. That's the one thing I have been looking for, is a tool that connects up my friends and tells me who's not registered to vote, so that I can pester the hell out of them and be like, are you sleeping? Are you in a cave right now?
Where
you have
are you?
no idea what's going on in the world, and you are not registered to vote? How dare you?
Here's the link. The link. It takes 5 minutes.
And I'm going to harass you every day until it gets done.
Yes, exactly. And Outvote will harass you to harass them. With push notifications.
Are you saying that that's a version 2.0 feature that you're working on implementing?
Yes, definitely. So that's something we will definitely be doing by November, is not just getting out the vote for candidates specifically or for organizations, but also for, issues. So we've actually piloted with a couple ballot measures already. We're doing some work with Represent Us in the Dakotas on kind of passing anti-corruption laws.
Oh, awesome.
And so that's fully, bipartisan. Pretty sure 90+% of people are on board for those. And so, and then definitely by November, we'll be trying to do exactly that. Tell you which of your friends are unregistered, and send them kind of a link to make sure, just to double check, even if they might be. Yeah.
That's great. So I've got a total left field question. So when you go before investors like this, like what you're doing next week, and asking them for seed money or additional seed money, does the partisanship hurt your chances of funding? Like I imagine everything right now is just so volatile and so partisan that you have to scale back that conversation. Not that I want to get into your pitch necessarily, because I don't want to ruin it for you. But at the same time, I am very curious right now if there is a hunger for this, regardless of partisanship, and what you think the environment's like.
Yeah, there's definitely a hunger for it, and it's new. We kind of came up with this idea outside of that, and then we kind of realized that a couple other people were trying this. Everyone wanted to do this, and we're like, oh, this is great. That's perfect, because that's what we thought too. So there's definitely a hunger for it, and it's something we're hoping to prove out, in the primaries and also this November. In terms of investors, you definitely come across that conversation. I think the main, question on everyone's mind is our investors' mind at least, is aren't you splitting your market in half by only serving Democrats? And it's certainly a fair question, but there are a few different answers to it. I mean, aside from, my and our whole team's kind of ideological perspective, setting that aside, there are a couple different things. One is that working with both parties is actually kind of a non-starter for the parties. So, it'd be both parties have their own data sets with which you can do voter matching. And if they thought, for any reason, even if you weren't, if you were somehow working with the other party, then that data might go over to help the other side.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of a non-starter. So they're like, we'll work with you if you don't work with them. Otherwise, we're not going to tell anyone about you. So, and no one's said that to us, but it's just what would happen.
Yeah, for sure.
But I think the more important thing here is that, and I think companies are starting to realize this with, delete Uber, delete Facebook, and just sponsorships in general. Companies are always reactive to, when someone does something bad, to drop their sponsorship. But like, brand is important. And what we're trying to do here is build a brand around activism, around Democrats and progressive causes. We want to work with nonprofits doing great work as well. And that's what we're going for as a brand and as a digital activist community. So if we were to serve both sides successfully, I wouldn't be excited, and I don't think our users would be excited about just plugging into that and spreading the word.
Yeah.
So, it takes a lot of trust with our users. They're syncing their context and stuff. There are privacy concerns now, and like, we're trying to be the opposite of Cambridge Analytica and just give you control over that data and text who you want with that data and turn it off when you don't want people to have that data. And so to build that trust, you need to build a brand and kind of stand for something. And I think companies are constantly reacting, and we're just kind of setting the what we stand for right at the get-go.
It's interesting. We interviewed one of the key people at eCanvasser, which is a platform out of Dublin. Oh, no, Cork, Ireland. And they're sort of like a minivan app, and they, for doorbelling, so to track your canvassing that you do online. And because they're a, European, UK based company, they don't have the partisanship, stuff that we struggle with.
Right.
They work on both sides of the aisle. It's sort of an understood, given that they are going to sometimes work for progressives and sometimes not for progressives. So it was an interesting that this is a unique, American experience, that partisanship is so deep and such distrust of the other side that there is no bridging that gap anymore. It's unfortunate, but that is where we are.
That's exactly right. And, we've been asked already by activists in other countries if we're going to go global and what it would look like there and if it would be partisan. And to be honest, I don't know, just because we don't know enough about politics in other countries. And maybe there are countries where just whoever it is can sign up, or we just don't have the expertise to make those decisions. And it's not clear kind of who aligns with our brand or what we stand for. So I don't know, what it will look like in the future there. But like you said, in the States, we're unfortunately so divided right now. So we're hoping to,
we get that question all the time, and because we're geared
conversations.
Yeah, exactly. We are geared towards, the down ballot races, and so many of them are nonpartisan. We've been just saying we're a Democratic yard with no fence. So if you want to come on over and, pass the Hillary Clinton yard sign that's in the yard, knock yourself out. But like, how do you get a nonpartisan mayoral campaign or sheriff's race in a particular state if these races are nonpartisan? Do you make them sign an affidavit?
Yeah.
You just can't sort of get, you can't really like split hairs on some of this stuff. But at the same time, our goal is to get more left of center people elected. That's our goal.
Yeah.
And if a good government, libertarian or Republican or Green Party person wants to come in and they don't want to drown government in the bathtub, then like, by all means, use our tools.
Over.
Yeah.
Sit in our lawn chair.
Right, exactly.
You can pull up a chair and have a mimosa with us. But we're not really catering to that audience. That said, we've had Republicans on the podcast, and their expertise and their, advice has been very, very helpful as well. So, but that is the number one question that we get from party officials is like, are you targeting Republicans? And it's like, no, we're not, but we're not prohibiting them either. We're not making people sign a contract with us that they're definitely Democrats. But I understand the struggle that you're going through. It's tough to navigate. Let's talk about cost and how people can get this product. So what are we looking at for, a down ballot campaign? What is the price?
Yeah. So we basically tried to build a tool that's super affordable for everyone, no matter where you are, up and down the ballot. Audience basically starts at $150 a month, and there's usually a 2-week to 1 month free trial, so they can make sure it's working for them. It's $150 a month flat rate for unlimited kind of messages. So a lot of folks charge per message, and it's kind of hard to budget. So we just kind of flatted it. If you want, we do actually offer services like Hustle kind of and Relay are offering where it's per text. And so it's kind of a separate feature that we don't push a lot, but campaigns have asked for it, so it's there. And that's per message pricing. But our core value is just like unlimited for a flat rate.
Okay. So I want to walk through this because now I'm a little confused.
Yeah.
So I download the app, I sign up, I enter my credit card information, and I've got a 1-month trial. I connect my contacts list to my account and then send emails out to my supporters, correct? Or send text messages out to my supporters.
Kind of. Yeah. So actually the app is all the user experience. So if a campaign wants to work through us, they can go to the website, or fill out the form, or just send an email to team@outvote.io, and we'll get you all set up on the platform. There's a whole separate like web dashboard interface where you can control kind of what you want the pictures and the videos to be, what the content is, what those scripts are that people are texting, and we'll like set all that up for you. And that's what's $150 a month for the campaign to be on the app basically and have their own link that they can send out to volunteers.
But is that unlimited users? Is that like unlimited?
Yeah.
I can have a team of 50 volunteers that can be signed up on this?
Yeah.
Oh, that's the part that was confusing to me. Okay, so that 150 is irrespective. Is that irrespective? Irregardless?
Irregardless is not a word.
Irregardless is not a word. Irrespective of...
You got it right.
Oh, God. I have not had enough coffee today, so I'm sorry for that. Irrespective of the size of my campaign, I can have unlimited users on there. That's the part that was kind of confusing me.
Not irrespective of the size of the campaign, but for local campaigns, basically the size of the campaign determines your monthly flat rate. So if you're congressional, I think it's either $250 or $500, and then Senate is like $500 to $1,000 basically, and a little bit up sometimes if it's really big.
Yeah.
Universe of people. But yeah, so local races is $150 a month for unlimited messages, unlimited users. But like it's capped based because like, the population is going to be 100,000 or less.
Right.
But then the campaign could choose to add hustle or relay, and then that's an additional cost per message if their volunteers are doing like sitting around doing some hustle.
Yeah, exactly. So it was a bit confusing because I didn't talk about that feature at all because it's not the core of what we do. But we offer the same thing as Hustle or Relay, where when you send a message, it's from an unknown number to a list of people the campaign wants to contact. The campaign can upload like 5,000 numbers that they know that they want to text that won't come from a friend. And so we provide that. We're less kind of excited about that as a method, but campaigns find it helpful. And sometimes like local campaigns like the ones your listeners are excited about can't afford, Hustle or something. So we're just we have that in there as well if people want it, and that's per message pricing.
Gotcha.
Cool.
Okay, so one more time, let's get the website and the process for how people can sign up.
Awesome. Yeah, the website is www.outvote.io, and you can send an email to team@outvote.io to sign up, or you can fill out the form on the website.
Fantastic.
Sweet.
Very good. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Naseem. We really enjoyed this. This was a fantastic discussion. Your product sounds fantastic for down ballot campaigns, and we really, really appreciate you taking the time, particularly before your big pitch next week, to walk us through your product.
Thank you.
And I just love the idea of you sitting around an incubator house, like dude broing like they do on TV.
Yes, it's exactly like that. Thank you so much for having me. Love what you guys are doing, and really excited to see what's to come for you all too.
Thanks, Naseem.
Have a good one.
All right. Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye. Another big thank you to Naseem Makiya for joining us today, founder and CEO of Outvote. Rainey, what'd you think?
I think it sounds cool. I'd like to try it.
I would like to try it too. I think that we're always looking for low-cost ways and something different on campaigns to contact voters in a way that they're not normally contacted through television, mail, Facebook ads, right? The way that we kind of redo campaigns over and over. And this peer-to-peer contact that is sort of the new wave of voter contact seems to be, the direction that people are moving. And that one little, add-on service that campaigns are doing to reach that vote. So
it's an exciting time in elections right now.
It is an exciting time.
I mean, I don't mean to sound all like ooey about it, but
it's so exciting.
Watching these platforms kind of develop and make it easier for us to talk to voters. Like worked on a major campaign, like as the phone lists were just crapping out and totally dying, and we couldn't call cell phone numbers. And I was like, how are we going to contact people? And I'm really glad that there are tools popping up that we can use to talk to our friends about voting.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And I like that some of the matching and all of that stuff is just done behind the scenes where campaigns don't have to muss or fuss with it. All they really have to do is sign up, log in, personalize their scripts, upload, if they're going to do a YouTube intro video or something fun like that, they just get that all done, hit send, and poof, it's out.
Well, and this is the part of like data collection that I don't have any issue with. Like if I'm being properly targeted by an ad or by a campaign because they know that I support these issues or that I am likely to support this candidate, I am all for collect my data and target me properly.
Right.
And so I think that this does this really well.
I agree. And it seems like we need to get City Councilor Naseem Makiya on the show. He sounds super impressive.
Yeah.
That'll
Part
be
two.
Yeah, okay. That'll be the next call. Listeners, what did you think? We would love to know if you've been testing any of these products out, to give us, your own personal review of what these products have done for your campaign. And we want to also celebrate that we are now downloaded in 58 countries. What is happening?
So many countries.
It's so many countries that I just don't understand. There are 198 countries in the world right now.
We're a quarter of the world.
We're at the quarter of the world.
Oh my God.
Is hearing my nasally Midwestern voice and your professional
incessant laughter
NPR radio voice. It's just a little weird. I don't understand it.
It's fine. Hi,
everyone. And we are very excited for our upcoming episode. So thank you again for tuning in on another episode of Election University Podcast. I'm your co-host, Jason Bennett.
And I'm Rainey Cohen.
Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll catch you next week.
See ya.
Bye.
Thank you for listening. This week's episode has ended, but the campaign fun doesn't have to. Head on over to www.electionu.com, where you can access all of the links mentioned in today's episode, as well as the show notes. There you can also sign up for regular announcements or register for our campaign school. It's your very own online personal trainer for winning campaigns. www.electionu.com. Click, learn, win.